Hi, my name is Pat Zalewski, and I'd like to talk about some background information on the Golden Dawn Vault. Since Nick Farrell's book, essentially on the Golden Dawn Vault, has recently come out, I've had about 10 emails asking me different questions on the background of the vault, what it's used for, and things along those lines. I'll just look at the general history of the vault, and we'll have a look at that and just see how it plays. Generally speaking, the Golden Dawn Vault was a modified version of the one from the SRIA, Society of Rosicrucians in Anglia, without the elaborate colour scales that Morena Mathers put in. That's where it came from. The the background of the vault itself and the focus point of the vault seems to be a point of confusion within the Golden Dawn and what it did and what it didn't do. The only real information we had from the published versions of the vault itself came from Flying Rolls 10, where Samuel Mathers actually broke the whole 5-6 ceremony down and described aspects of the vault through a combination of sacrifice. But there was a lot more to it than that. When Dr. Felkin he believed in the vault and the old Rosicrucian vault in literal terms, or that's what we were led to believe, that there was one somewhere, and he kept looking for it. It was a bit like the Holy Grail for him, and so he was convinced that what he had was a real thing. It was not just a metaphysical concept or something along those particular lines. It was for him it was a genuine article, and he never had the genuine article, but the Golden Dawn one for him was essentially probably the next best thing. If you have a look at the Felkin's flying roll lecture on the sides of the vault itself, he goes into some elaboration on how everything within the vault is put together. When I first contacted Jack Taylor, and I went through some of the aspects of the vault, he gave me a copy with some papers which virtually came from the Book of the Tomb. They were not in its complete corpus, but it was fragmented. But that's what they did, and they were looking at the vault from the astrological system of where things were placed in the elemental ranks, and then there was a tree of life encapsulated on top of that. That was their viewpoint, and even though Felkin didn't elaborate too much more than what he actually did about the functionality of the vault, he tried to bring in the historical aspect of it through his own papers, which weren't that bad really. They opened up a few doors and they've laid things out pretty plainly. When you get the Book of the Tomb, it also says something very similar. The Book of the Tomb was actually made up, I think, at a later stage, not in the original Golden Dawn as far as I'm aware. Some scholars could pick me up on that, but the Felkin papers were around for quite some time within the Stella Matutina. What happened was that after Dr. Felkin's death in the late 1920s, mid to late 1920s, and into the 1930s, the people in the Stella Matutina wanted more information. I know that at their temple at Ferrara, what they did was they did their own individual studies on the vault and how it worked, and the individual teachers, wardens, or guides tried to help them with this. And so there was a fairly fragmented association to it. But what happened was, with the advent of Alice Bailey's work, and they come out in the 1930s, Mrs. Felkin shifted her gaze and she raised things up a notch. Instead of having the bare technicalities that the good doctor wrote about the construction of the vault itself, she brought in the implement of the 7 rays. And the 7 rays were in Theosophy. And if you have a look at the book by Woods, I think that's the basic clear-cut division of the 7 rays that you'll find from a theosophical perspective. When Alice Bailey, who was the secretary for the Theosophical Society, got together and she worked on the 7 rays, she changed quite a few of the associations, planetary associations. So her planetary associations are not exactly great ones, but the ones by Wood is fairly good as far as it goes. And what she maintained was that the rays came in through the vault itself, through the walls of the vault, and that was the focus points. There was a paper put out It was dated about 1938, I think, from memory. I could be wrong there, but it come out and it stated how her teachers, and she stressed her guides, had given her some information on the seven rays, and they were the same as what Alice Bailey did, which I find quite perplexing, considering the seven rays that Alice Bailey gives are a little bit lopsided in some respects as far as titles went, but certainly not the mechanisms. But anyway, so what actually happened was from the 1930s onwards, Bailey's books were put in the Ferry Royal Library and used quite a great deal, as far as the seven rays went. And although there was no papers that I know written on this, I may have missed one or passed one from time to time and forgotten about it. But the oral teachings were that the seven rays came in through the vault, and that was most important because then that was taken to go into once that was established from an oral viewpoint. Most of the individual people then looked at drawing links to other areas of the Golden Dawn through these seven rays. But that's the focus point. So it went from the astrological elaboration, breaking down the sides, explaining it from an astrological perspective, to the seven rays. If anyone wanted to know more about the vault, they got into Bailey's work on the seven rays. But Bailey's work on the seven rays is a massive, massive thing, and very perplexing, badly written as far as structurally goes, but certainly the information, it's like gold as far as it goes. So what happened was that they cherry-picked aspects of Bailey's work and applied it to the Golden Dawn. Now they all did this. Anyone who was in the inner order would have picked up Bailey's work and did it because it was one of the basic tomes that they used. So the shift went from Mrs. Felkin adopting Bailey's seven ray theory, which were modified from theosophy, and then applying that to the vault itself. And that's how they looked at that was the additional factors, the shifting the game up from the bare analysis work of the good doctor. And there's further aspects of that yet again, which I've done myself. I've extrapolated out a hell of a lot further. But that was the baseline. Now, I've spoken to Jack Taylor, Frank Sott, even Bethany Jones. All three I've asked questions on that, and all three I asked directly. I said, was the seven rays connected to the vault itself? And the answer for all three was yes. So that was part of what they did. So when you look at the vault from the Ferry Royal perspective, and Mrs. Felkin's perspective, that's how they did it. If you came in through the Golden Dawn version and you look at Mather's Flying Roll 10, you get a slightly different picture. It doesn't mean to say it's the difference really is the shifting of focus. When you look at the seven rays, you see the focus points of what came through. When you look at what Mathers did, he's describing what was actually going on from the ritual itself and wrapping it up in Kabbalistic terms. And although that's the Flying Rolls 10 was used within the Stella Matutina, a lot of people found the complexity of the Mathers Flying Rolls 10 a little bit much for them, because the changing of God forms, it related to God forms coming in and coming out very, very quickly. That's something that also is applied to the when you study the outer order rituals, you'll see the same thing being applied there very, very easily, especially when you look at the breakdown of the papers. So what was going on here was different directional changes by the SM. They didn't ignore what Mathers wrote. They took it as part of the ritual, but the vault itself, which was never fully explained by Mathers, apart from what's in the ritual itself, that was a totally different ball game. So remember, we're looking at when you look at the seven rays, you can't help but go into the functionality of the seven rays. I mean, to say that's standard. And when you look at the functionality of the seven rays, you'll see how they work and how they function. Then you've got to apply that to the vault itself. There were some areas that the Felkins could have gone a lot further in this, or Mrs. Felkin at least. But the problem that they had was that 6.5 and 7.4 rituals of the SM didn't go further into the vault. They were very, very lightweight. They were pleasant, nice, okay. They're good rituals. Don't get me wrong here. I don't use them myself. I went through them, but it's not really what I envisaged as a teaching learning mechanism. And Rigardi said to me when he came out to meet me in New Zealand in August of 83, he said that he was disappointed that Felkin never explained the vault more. And that was really a bit of a kicker for me to get in and do more work to it. Rigardi came along the vault more of a psychological perspective, going into the womb and regression, things along those lines. We actually talked about that for hours on what all the psychology of it was, but the functionality and the esoteric aspect was missing in the conversation. I knew this, but Francis always seemed to steer in that direction, and that was important. So when you look at Bailey and you look at the incredible breakdown of what the seven rays mean, you can then start applying them to the walls of the vault and what the functionality is. And then again, if you what should have happened is they should have gone into the cellular disposition of the walls, and what I'm talking about is selected certain cells on from the vault wall from different from the different functionalities, and explained what each one meant. That's something that I made my own adjustments to. I looked at cell by cell, every single one on a particular wall in the rituals, to explain how they worked and what they did from the seven ray theory. So the seven rays I thought were fairly important within it. It's going to be up to you if you want to adopt this particular theory of how they go. The AO, to the best of my knowledge, never looked into this too much. I'm not privy to the AO papers of the 6.5 and 7.4, but I do know that the 6.5 AO ritual left out the bulk completely. It was all concentrating on the outer order, and that's really what he was concentrating on. He didn't want to get into the inner order and break things down regarding the vault. We do not know the AO teachings of the 6.5 and the 7.4. We've got glimpses. Some things were probably kicked upstairs. There was a paper by Metatron and Sandalphon which Tony Fuller unearthed, and that was originally an outer order paper that was kicked upstairs to the higher levels within the AO and brought into the SM. That's a paper in itself. Is very, very interesting. But anyway, we've got glimpses of this. We don't really have the information at hand. And the only way you could understand the vault is if you have to link it in with almost everything that's happening, because it's really one of the it's not the main thing, but it's one of the central pillars, or one of the pillars of the Golden Dawn, and the Golden Dawn's inner order, and it brings in the Rosicrucian concept, which also relates to sacrifice as well. So we're bringing in that element. So the vault itself, it's going to be up to you what you decide what you want to do with it. But the SM definitely looked at the seven ray theory and brought it through. I've done that in my own work and my own time. I've looked at it in some depth. And this is what I suggest that some of you do out there. There's also other elements involved in the vault. There's also the when you bring in the chemical wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz, you've got the 7 days, and there's a co-relationship there which is quite profound if you want to take it, and those particular areas there as well. So there are alchemical elements, there are sacrificial elements, there's a Kabbalistic elements, and there's the 7 ray elements of Bailey. The most arcane in general sense is probably the 7 rays, but while I say they're arcane, and if you look at it in a generalized viewpoint, Bailey has so much information that can be applied. It's absolutely incredible, but it's up to you to see how far you want to push that, if you want to go in and do some vault study. So the vault itself is it's open for more study, more debate by Golden Dawn scholars over the years, and most scholars will hit it from a certain perspective. They will hit things from a different area, and I would probably approach the vault from one area, then I'd approach it from another, and scholars would do pretty much the same thing, but they'd focus primarily on one major theme within it. Because if they start breaking down the themes, they certainly wouldn't have enough paper to actually go in and do the whole lot. So what I suggest is that you do more work in those areas. Look at that. Once you understand the concept of the 7 rays, part of the functionality of the vault is revealed to you. Now, did Mathis have this in mind? Of course he knew about the 7 rays. It was part of theosophy. I mean to say, it was well known, and all you got to do is look at some of the Golden Dawn work on the rainbow colours and things along those lines, and you can get inklings of what the seven rays introduced. But Mathers didn't want to go too much into the Indian side of it, which the seven rays were built around. If you have a look at Woods's book on the seven rays, you'll from Quest Books, you'll start to see how it works on one particular level. If you go back through Blavatsky's work, the seven rays are mentioned there a number of times within the Theosophy. And so Mathers was fully aware of this, but he didn't elaborate too much on it. Westcott hints about it, but doesn't go into too much detail. So, but what you've got here is an area that needs further study on its composition, its structure, the different levels to it, because in the vault there are numerous levels, just like all golden ritual. It's not totally Rosicrucian, it's not totally Christian, it's a mixture of everything combined. And when you've got to look at all these layers and look at them separately, stage by stage, and that's when you start to get some sort of an inkling on how the actual vault actually goes. So if you took the Flying Rolls 10, you'd come at it from one perspective. If you look at Bailey's work or Woods's work, I find is probably a more lead in, you get another. And then you start to look at the functionality between all of that. So essentially, it's quite a very, very interesting look. It's something that'll be with many years. I've been looking at the vault for over 30 odd years now, and I'm still looking at its mysteries. And the key really is you look at how it's made, and then the functionality of what happens within it. It becomes very apparent. But also what Mathers did, he, in Flying Rolls 10, he became very, very complex about God forms. And that's most important, because the God forms within the 5-6 ritual and their changeability and how they actually work all again relate into another level, into the seven rays, if you look at it from a certain prismatic viewpoint. So all of this is interconnected here. What you've got to do is look for the patterns that connect the dots. And they're there. There's more than one of them, and there's numerous layers. And the only way you're going to do this is by research. But that's the general background. So I can't tell you where the AO went, because I don't know. I have no AO papers on that. But I do know which way the SM went. And the shift, the quantum shift, was getting away from the walls and looking at the rays coming through. Because what happened here was when the rays started to come through the vault, you started to get, as Mrs. Felkin put this together, things became more complex, and the functionality of the vault was revealed through the aspects of the rays. And that's what I suggest you have a look at. Some of you may not agree with me, but that's fine. I mean to say, this is it's just a hint in a certain direction to see how things would go.